my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place to come together and share childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from all over the world. I'd like to take a minute to talk about this episode's sponsor, Aeroflow Breast Pumps. Did you know that breast pumps and milk storage bags, maternity compression garments, even lactation education and support can all be covered by your insurance? Aeroflow helps millions of parents unlock these breastfeeding and postpartum essentials by working directly with your insurance company to get these free essentials shipped straight to your door. Aeroflow offers all major pump brands, including Medela, Spectra, Motif, Lancino, Amita, LV, Willow, and more. Visit aeroflowbreastpumps.com/birthhour to fill out their free and easy qualify through insurance form. Don't forget to use the promo code BIRTHHOUR15 in their online shop for 15% off all supplies and accessories. You've got enough on your plate. Why not let Aeroflow Breast Pumps help support you on your breastfeeding journey? At the end of this episode, I talk with Kate not only about getting her breast pump for free through Aeroflow, but also about taking advantage of their online lactation classes. So stay tuned for that conversation. Before we get to today's birth story, I want to talk a little bit about our online childbirth course. It's called Know Your Options, and this is the course you've been looking for if you just have that gut feeling that you know you should be taking a childbirth course, but maybe the one that's being offered to you by your care provider is not exactly what you're looking for. It might be more catered towards the type of birth they want you to have versus making you informed of all your different options and how to address different things that happen in birth. Because as this podcast has shown us, birth is very unpredictable. So we would love to have you check out our 12-module course. You can go to thebirthhour.com/course to see detailed outlines of what is included in the course. You will also get a bonus course called Beyond the First Latch that is an additional 6 modules all about pumping, feeding your baby, going back to paid work if that's part of your plan. And we have a special coupon code for you. It's 100OFF for $100 off enrollment. Again, that's thebirthhour.com/course. Another way you can get involved with the Birth Hour community is by joining our Patreon. This is where you pledge your support of the Birth Hour at $5 a month or more, and you get perks in return, like access to all of our archived episodes. That's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes. We've been putting out birth stories since 2015, and those are all available in our archives via Patreon. And you also get access to our private Facebook community, which is a really great group of people who are there to support you, become friends, and just encourage you on this journey through parenthood. So find out more about that at patreon.com/birthhour. Today's guest is Kate, and she has 2 positive hospital birth stories to share with us, though they were quite different. I'll let her share all of the details, but the first one was with an epidural, and the second one was without any pain medication. All right, let's hear from Kate. Hi, Kate. Welcome to the Birth Hour. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm excited to hear 2 stories from you. But before we get to that, can you tell listeners a little bit about you and your family?
Yeah. So I'm Kate Givhan. I am 30 years old and I live in Huntsville, Alabama. I have 2 boys. One is 2.5 and the other is 6 weeks old. I currently work as a quality engineer for an aerospace company, and my husband works in the IT field.
All right. We're going to hear both stories today. So let's go ahead and start with your first pregnancy, wherever you want to start us there.
Sure. So me and my husband got married in 2019. We were 25 at the time. So we knew we wanted to have kids, but didn't know when that was going to happen. So we had kind of been talking about it, just throwing around the idea of are we ready? Are we not? And back in the summer of 2021, we decided, okay, we're in a good place to start trying. So I traveled a lot for work, so I knew that there might be some months that we wouldn't be able to get pregnant. So that was just something that we had in the back of our mind that, we're ready to start trying, but we might not get pregnant right away, or it might just not work that month. So we started trying in the summer, and come 2022, we still weren't pregnant, but we weren't worried about it. And then in March, we took a trip to Costa Rica and came back, and I had been kind of feeling sick, and I thought, oh, maybe it's the water or something I ate there that made me feel nauseous and kind of sick to my stomach. So went to work Monday, and I started getting crampy, and I was like, oh, let me just take a pregnancy test. Like, it's probably negative. So I came home, took a test, and it was so faint. Like, I went in my closet, I went outside, I looked at it in like every possible light to try and see, and it was super faint. So I was like, well, I have another one, like a digital one. Let me take that. I went and took that, and it was positive, and we were very surprised. So I told my husband when he came home, and he was like, oh my gosh, it worked. So just very excited that, to find out that we were pregnant. And that's kind of how we found out with our first.
Okay. I like the little bit of disbelief, but a lot of excitement.
I know.
All right. So how did your pregnancy go?
So it went pretty good. So I was with an OB/GYN group just for like my yearly checkup. So I figured I would go see them for pregnancy. And I had heard like you wouldn't go until like your 8 weeks. So I knew when I called to kind of expect that. Early pregnancy, I had a lot of cramping, and I did not know that would be a symptom. So I was kind of concerned, but I had no bleeding. So I called them, and they said, as long as there's no bleeding or anything else going on, just to wait. So when that 8-week appointment came, I was really nervous that, something might happen. But everything looked good. So we stayed with that OB clinic. I really liked my OB. I had not met any of the other clinicians there, and they told me that like whoever is on call would be who would be delivering. So I felt okay with that. Didn't really mind, but I only saw my OB. I didn't rotate through the different doctors there. But after that 8-week appointment, at 12 weeks, I think the cramping kind of subsided. So that was good. And then at 12 weeks, we decided to do genetic testing through the blood test that they do there. And they sent it off and then called me the next day and said that something went wrong with the blood work, so they had to do it again. So I went in and did it again, and I waited like a month to get my results back, which I guess is not normal. And when I went in at 16 weeks, they said that there was not like enough genetic potential from the baby for them to do any genetic testing, which they said could potentially happen. And some research I found said, like, if you're having a boy or if you're overweight, like that could cause that also, which happened to be the case for me. So we were doing it mostly just to find out the gender. So at 16 weeks, they offered us a free ultrasound instead. So I don't know like how common that is, but that did happen to me, and we didn't pay for it. But we did, it just didn't work for some reason.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard that before. It's interesting.
Yeah. So we found out we're having a boy during that ultrasound. So we're excited about that. Between, I think that 16 weeks and 20 weeks, we took a little baby moon and went on a cruise, and I ended up with COVID right when we got home. So I wasn't sure like how, in 2022, it was still kind of a thing to get COVID, right? And that was my first time getting it. And it just kind of was like normal cold symptoms. Like it didn't affect the baby at all, and it didn't really overly affect me or my pregnancy. But that just happened to be the first time I got COVID was while I was pregnant in early pregnancy. And then at 20 weeks, we did the 20-week ultrasound, and everything looked good, except they did find that I think placenta previa, where my placenta was kind of covering part of my cervix. So my doctor wasn't like overly concerned. She just said, to stay on pelvic rest, and then they'll keep doing ultrasounds to see if it moves. I think by week 28, it did end up moving. So that risk of having placenta previa and delivering kind of went away. After that, like everything was pretty good. We did the glucose test, I think at 28 weeks. And they, it's the 1 hour where you drink the sugary drink. And I ended up failing that. And I think it was only by a couple points. But because I am, plus size, they wanted to err on the side of caution and ended up doing the 3-hour test. And that one I did pass. So they said I didn't have gestational diabetes. So that was good. Everything from that point on was pretty good. I did get a lot of swelling. And at the time, I didn't know about preeclampsia, and no one had ever brought up preeclampsia to me. So I was never aware like swelling could be an issue or a concern. And no one really said anything to me. Just my feet were very swollen. I just thought, oh, pregnancy, you get swollen, not a problem. So everything was fine. And then up to 39 weeks, I went to my 39-week appointment, and they asked if I wanted to get a cervical check. And I had heard like it could hurt. So I was a little nervous, but I said yes. I did want to know like where I was at. So I did get the cervical check done, and I was like 1 centimeter and like maybe 80% effaced. And she offered to do the membrane sweep, and I said, sure, that's fine. So she did the membrane sweep, and it didn't really hurt. It was just kind of a lot of pressure. And I went to work that day, and I just had like some cramping and a little bit of spotting, but nothing too bad. So I didn't really think anything of it. And the next night went home, my dog would not go to sleep all night. Like he just kept barking. I was like, something's wrong. I was telling my husband, I was like, I feel hormonal. Like, I feel like I'm going to have this baby, like something's going on, and it just like, I just felt like something was going to happen. And so at that point, like he eventually went to sleep at like 1 a.m. I went to sleep, and at 3 a.m, I just like woke up for some reason and like sat up in bed, and my water broke. So I was like surprised and shocked and like nervous. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? So, you see in the movies, everyone's like, oh my God, my water breaks, like rush to the hospital. But I had no contractions, like nothing was happening. I just like water broke. So I didn't really know what to do. So I went to the bathroom. I woke my husband up, and he came in and he actually slipped in the bathroom floor because the water had leaked everywhere and he didn't know it was there. So that's kind of a funny moment to think back on. But we did have a doula for this birth, and I decided to call her at 3 a.m. because we were supposed to have an appointment the next day and be like, hey, my water broke. What am I supposed to do? So she kind of walked me through it, and I told her like I wasn't having contractions yet. Like I was only 1 centimeter dilated. The fluid was clear, so I wasn't concerned about anything wrong with the baby at that point. That's kind of where I guess my labor started.
Yeah. Okay. So it's always like a little stressful when the water breaks ahead of time because you never know what's going to happen from there. So what were the next steps for you?
Yeah. So after calling the doula, like I had like the nursery was ready to go. I had kind of packed her hospital bag a little bit, and I had like a list on my phone. So I was like, well, I guess we're going to go to the hospital today. So just went ahead and started packing everything that I needed. As I was doing that, like I started having some contractions, but they weren't, overly painful. It kind of felt like period cramps to me. So yeah, my water broke at 3. I think I started having contractions around 4 maybe, and just kind of puddled through my house when my husband slept, and got everything packed. And then around 6, maybe I started timing them, and I noticed that they were like 3-4 minutes apart, 1 minute long. And that's what they always tell you, like, go to the hospital. But I was like, I can still breathe through them. They're not super painful. I'm not really sure what to do. But being like a first time mom, I felt like we should go to the hospital just to see, like, okay, I'm pretty sure my water broke because it kept coming out. And that was something too that I didn't know, that like, I thought your water broke and it just broke and that was it. But it just like kept leaking everywhere. And, just go to the hospital and see, where we're at. And I called my doula and told her that. And she's like, if you go, they're probably going to keep you. And I felt like that was okay. I didn't feel like I needed to be at home to labor. I felt it was fine to go to the hospital and be somewhere that they could check my cervix. They can tell me where I'm at. And if something goes wrong, like we're already there. So we went ahead and went to the hospital. I got admitted, my water did break. They checked that. And then I was still, I think like 1 centimeter in, 80% effaced. So it wasn't, I hadn't progressed really from, that short amount of time of contractions. But they did go ahead and admit me, and I met with the OB on call. So I had never met her before. But my doula had, and she said she's great. So, I trusted that, her guidance and her experience in the OB's experience. And so they kind of just talked to me about like what my birth plan was. And I didn't have, anything major. Initially I wanted to try to go unmedicated. I wanted to try like as, few interventions as possible. And mostly I just wanted to be, looped into the conversation of what the the care plan would be, moving forward, and help make those decisions as well as needed. So once I was admitted, I kind of wanted to labor on my own for a little bit. I think around 12, I called my doula because I was experiencing a lot of back labor. So it was mostly, I think, for what I can remember, some period cramps and then a lot of back pain. And she suggested, she come in and start, trying different countermeasures to try and prevent the pain from, me thinking that I need the epidural from the pain, So she came in at 12 and kind of helped me work through some of those contractions. Then the OB came back and she really did push Pitocin, mostly because I was still 1 centimeter and the contraction pattern wasn't necessarily what they wanted to see. And they thought using Pitocin would make them more consistent. So I agreed to getting Pitocin as long as I can get an epidural. I think I was mostly just scared of the pain from hearing people talk about like the Pitocin contractions. I just didn't want to even try. And I think that's something that I regretted from this labor, was that I didn't even try to see like, okay, was it something that I could handle or maybe not handle? I just kind of went off what everyone else said of, it's so painful, that I just knew. I was like, oh my gosh, it freaked me out, and just decided to get the epidural. And, I was really afraid of the epidural, and that was mostly my motivation for going unmedicated. But it really wasn't that bad compared to, I guess, what I was feeling contraction-wise. So got the epidural, kind of using the peanut ball, flipping on sides to try and get the baby to move down since he was pretty high up. The doula helped with that, flipping me from side to side. My husband helped as well. So we did that for a couple hours. And I'd say around 7 or 8 o'clock at night, I started feeling the contractions again. And I don't know if the epidural wore off or if it like came out or something, but I was starting to feel them again. So they tried to push like another bolus of the medicine through, and it helped for maybe an hour, and then it started hurting again. So we called to get another anesthesiologist up to assess it, and they decided that I would need another epidural. So I went from like not wanting an epidural to getting 2 epidurals for this labor. So it was, an experience, but I'm in the end glad that I got it. So I got the second epidural, and we continued to labor through. And I think around 2 o'clock in the morning the next day, maybe, they checked my cervix, and I was like 9.5. So I had like a little bit of a cervical lip, and I was starting to feel some like pain again. So they just kind of were like massaging my back, and I was just doing everything I could to like move forward. Cause at this point I was kind of over it, because we're approaching like 24 hours in labor. And, I guess once your water breaks, like they want you to deliver within 24 hours. So I had kind of known this. So I knew like the clock was ticking a little bit. I never heard anyone say anything, but my husband told me that he thinks the OB was kind of like lingering around waiting to try and like do a C-section at this point. But again, like I didn't hear that. So in my mind, that was never like a question. I was like, oh, we're almost there. Like we're going to have this vaginal birth. And I kept asking them to check, and it was still like 9.5. Eventually they came and checked, and I had 2 night nurses, and one of them I guess was newer, and she checked and she's like, oh my God, he's breech. And I just like sucked down. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, how is he breech? You've checked him like a million times. How all of a sudden is this happening? And I just got like real defeated. And the other nurse came in and checked, and she's like, no, he's not breech. I was like, oh my gosh, thank God. Like I didn't go through this whole labor just for him to all of a sudden be breech. And she was able to, I guess, move that cervical lip, and we could start pushing. So for me, like I didn't feel a lot of pressure or anything. I just kind of, I could feel the contractions a little bit, and I had some movement. So when it came time to push, the first push, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And they kind of helped coach me through it. And then I pushed him out completely. Like there was no fetal ejection reflex, nothing. I was just like, I'm getting this baby out and I'm pushing. I don't care if I tear, like this baby is coming out. So we pushed for about I don't know, 25, 30 minutes. And he came out and was crying, super healthy. And he was 8 pounds, 5 ounces, I think, and 21 inches. And he was a week early.
Wow.
So I can't imagine what he would be if he was like on time. So he was a big baby.
He was ready. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think I had like a 3rd-degree tear after that. And I could feel the stitches too. So I don't know if they turned the epidural off or if it had worn off again at that point. So they did use like the lidocaine to kind of numb the area, but the healing from that like really wasn't that bad for me. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know you want to share more about postpartum after your second birth story. So let's go ahead and just talk about, getting pregnant with your second.
Yeah. So when we knew we wanted more than one child. So we didn't know like when exactly that was going to be. After I had our first son, Rowan, immediately after, my body was like, you need another baby. You need to do this again. And I'm like, that is just illogical. Like I cannot get pregnant right away. But like my mind it's just like the hormone dump, I guess. I don't know. My mind was just like, you need another baby now.
That's funny.
Yes. And I was like telling my husband this, and he's like, you're crazy. No. And I was like, I know, like logically we can't do this, but like my body is telling me I need to. So, we knew we wanted another one. We didn't know like how far apart we wanted them. My husband's one of 6, the oldest of 6. So he has lots of siblings close in age, and I'm a twin. So, that's kind of, we're trying to figure out what is a good age gap for us. Cause I grew up with someone who's the same age as me, and he grew up with all these siblings of different ages. And so the fall of 23, I had decided to get off birth control just to see like what would happen with my body. After going through pregnancy, I did get my period back, and it was normal, and it was before, but the range for like my fertile window changed. So I had been using like ovulation strips just to see like, okay, am I ovulating? Like where am I at after having a baby? And so got off birth control that fall, and we weren't trying, but we weren't preventing. So like, if we get pregnant, great. If we don't, like, that's fine. Like we don't really care at this point. So we've gone through, a couple months, and in the summer of 24, I had thought like, ooh, maybe we accidentally got pregnant. So I've been like testing secretly, like behind my husband's back. Like he had no idea, and was taking like those little strip pregnancy tests. And like one day it like was super faint. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I was like, oh no, we're pregnant, but also like excited again too. But it was totally different from like the first time where we were like actively trying and, tracking ovulation and all of the things, and like kind of being obsessive about it. This time it was just like, oh, like we're pregnant, exciting. So I told him, and he was like, oh my gosh, like, how did that happen? I don't know. So he was, really excited about it, but it was obviously not, super planned, but we were so thankful, that it happened, and seems to be good timing with our toddler.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of how we found out about baby number 2.
Okay. And how did your pregnancy go this time?
Yeah. So between my first pregnancy and this one, I had discovered this podcast. So I had learned a lot more about birth, and a lot of people were talking about like midwives and other types of providers. So I had looked into like what else is available in the area that I live in. And they have a clinic I think it's like 3 OBs and like 5 midwives. And I thought, for this birth, I wanted to try the midwifery care and kind of see like if, I had a very positive experience with my first birth, but I wanted to be like more involved, I guess, with the care. Or that's kind of what I thought it would be like using a midwife versus an OB group. And so I picked the midwife group here, and actually 3 days after I found out I was pregnant, I was offered a new job. So that was exciting and a blessing, but also very stressful to go and be like, hey, by the way, like, I'm going to accept this job, but I'm also just found out I'm pregnant and will be leaving in, 8 months. So they were very thankful for that, but that meant that I did have to travel a lot in the beginning for this new job also. So being pregnant and being, nauseous, I had a lot of fatigue with this pregnancy, but then also having to be like very present, learning, a new role, was very challenging. So that was something different between the first and this pregnancy. And then because of the work, I wasn't able to go to my first appointment with the midwives until I was about 10 weeks pregnant. And so because of that, I was nervous that maybe I had lost the baby or something. I had no symptoms of it, but I decided to go to a private clinic and get an ultrasound done just to make sure, like at 7 weeks, that there was a heartbeat and a baby in there, because I knew I wouldn't be able to go to the midwives until about 10 weeks. So symptoms were pretty much the same. I had no cramping this time. I guess maybe just because, I had already gone through a pregnancy, my uterus knew what was going on. I don't know. And then I was nauseous, but not, with my first pregnancy, I had some nausea, nothing major, and some vomiting. This one, I mostly just was nauseous, not a lot of vomiting. And then the fatigue. And I don't know if that's just the pregnancy or having a toddler, a new job, but overall, the early pregnancy was pretty normal. With the midwife group, they spent more time like asking questions and being present if I had questions. But since it was my second pregnancy, I didn't have a lot of questions to go off of. They did encourage me to rotate between the different midwives. So I did that throughout my pregnancy and met all of them. In a way, it was good to see them, but also I felt like my care kind of was all over the place just because it was the first time I would see a new midwife and they'd have to ask me well, what happened, the last few weeks. So maybe next time, or if someone is listening to this, it is nice to meet the other midwives, but also, or the other providers. But I feel like my care maybe would have been better if I stuck with just one person throughout it. And, I didn't really mind who would be delivering my baby. But I felt like everyone had different thoughts on things and different views instead of just talking to one person and them knowing what had happened, through my pregnancy. So that was early pregnancy. Around 12 weeks again, I got COVID. So I don't know what my body thinks is happening when I'm pregnant, but apparently it likes to get COVID when I'm pregnant.
Yeah. Well, you have a weakened immune system. So
yeah. So it was definitely I got COVID. It was kind of the same thing, baby was fine, but I was definitely sick, just kind of, cold flu symptoms, nothing too crazy. And then around, I think too, at 12 weeks, I had no more nausea. So that it just went away. And they had told me that it's at that point, I guess, because the placenta is more formed, your nausea goes away, which I know is not true for everyone. But they said, most people, when the placenta is formed, that's when the nausea will subside. So that was something I had never heard. But that's what the midwives told me. And then at 20 weeks, we had our anatomy scan and everything looked good, except baby was super curled up. So they couldn't see the heart. And then they did see some fluid on his kidneys, which they said could be, I guess is more common in boys. And then I guess could be kind of common. So they just wanted to do another check at 26 weeks. So we went in 26 weeks and did the ultrasound. And at that point, the fluid was not a concern. And they were able to see his heart and everything looked good. And this time, no placenta previa or anything like that. And then I also did the glucose test and I had passed this time, the first time. So they had also suggested that I eat a lot of protein before the glucose test. I don't know if it kind of balances out the sugar so you don't crash as much. I have no idea, but I did pass this time around. Again, I had some swelling. It wasn't as bad, I thought, as the first pregnancy, but because of that, they started seeing that they wanted to do some blood work to get a baseline for preeclampsia. So again, like I said, I had never heard of preeclampsia until after I listened to this podcast. So going into this pregnancy, I was aware of kind of those symptoms. So I was glad that they wanted to do that blood work in case something later on happened. They can compare and say oh yeah, your protein levels rose or whatever. So we had done that. And then around 32 weeks, they started doing stress tests. So I had never done that with my first pregnancy. And I had asked them why, and they said it's just because I'm considered, quote unquote, high risk for being overweight. So they weren't necessarily concerned with me gaining weight or anything like that. And I didn't gain a lot of weight, but they, just wanted to monitor the baby to make sure everything looked good just in case. So we did a couple stress tests. Everything looked fine. And then they did another ultrasound, I think at 36 weeks, and he was measuring 2 weeks ahead and was already like 7.5 pounds. So I was like, oh no, I'm going to go through pregnancy again and get to the end and have maybe like a 10 or 11 pound baby. But I didn't have gestational diabetes, and I did have, some extra fluid, just being swollen, but no one was really concerned about it. And so that's kind of pregnancy. And then at like 37 and 6, I had woken up with a headache and, kind of knew those symptoms of preeclampsia. So I was like, let me go ahead and take my blood pressure. And throughout the pregnancy, it had been normal, like 120s, 130s. I went and took it. It was 162 over 101. So, I think they say anything over 160, like you need to go to the OB ER or whatever. And so I was like, I'm going to wait a minute and I'm going to take it again. And so I kept taking it over the next like hour or so. And it was like 150s over 90s. So I had decided to message them and say like, hey, this is what I'm getting. Like, should I go to the OB ER? And I had an appointment the next day. So I was like, well, should I wait? And they said, no, you should go, because they could do rapid testing there to see if it is preeclampsia or nothing. So I ended up going to the OB/OR maybe 10 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock. They admitted me to triage. They took blood and urine and then kept doing my blood pressure. And it kind of fluctuated between like 140s, 150s. So it didn't get back up to 160s, I don't believe. But once they did the blood work and the urine, all of that came back like negative for preeclampsia. So I had, at that point, talked to whoever the nurse practitioner was, and they said they're diagnosing me with gestational hypertension. So it wasn't preeclampsia, but it was something. So like all of a sudden I just started having these high blood pressure readings. And because I was past 37 weeks, and baby was already measuring big, they decided that they were going to go ahead and induce me. So called my husband, told him, like, he knew I was there, but he didn't know like what was going on. Told him, hey, we're being induced. I need you to go home and pack all of these things for me and come meet me at the hospital. So that's how this labor started. So a little bit different than the last, but
yeah,
I guess we can go into the induction and what happened.
Yeah, let's do it.
So went in and got admitted, and they wanted to start with cytotech, which I was okay with. They checked me and I was 1 centimeter and like 30%, or it was maybe half a centimeter, 1 centimeter and 30% effaced. So wanted to start with cytotech to try and soften that cervix. I said, that's fine. We did hire the same doula again. However, she was on vacation and, no one anticipated me going and having this induction this early. So she had a backup doula. So I had never met. So I'm texting this lady, like letting her know what's going on. And texting my doula while she's in Mexico with her kids, be like, hey, I'm going into labor. Like, I'll keep you posted. So I felt, bad that, we had hired her and like, she's not here and we had to use her backup. But I think that's kind of, what happens with doulas, and they're aware of that. And that's why they have backups. So just letting everyone know what was happening. We started the cytotech around 2 o'clock. And for this one, it was like orally, and I think you can take it every 4 hours. So we started that, and while I was in triage, they had the baby on the monitor, and I could see I was having like some contractions. They weren't super frequent and they weren't, really painful at all. They were enough that I could kind of feel them and see them. So I felt like, because I was having some contractions, that this was probably going to be a successful induction, just because my body, one, it's the second pregnancy, and two, like my body hopefully kind of knew what was going on. And with this one, I wanted to try and go unmedicated again, and had kind of talked with my doula about like my fears last time of like, okay, maybe like push me not to get the epidural as quickly or try something else, because, I might just cave and be like, it's right there, let's just take it, when I really did want to try to have an unmedicated birth, mostly just for the experience and, the potential health benefits of it. So started cytotech around 2, and everything was going good. Like I could feel the contractions, and this time it felt more like not necessarily period cramps. It was just like my uterus was just squishing together. And so I didn't have like the back pain like last time, and it just felt different to me. And I don't know if that's just like the medication, like that's just what it does, versus your body producing like its own, contractions. But I was able to kind of like breathe through them. I tried to move around the room just to kind of get some movement going. And before this, I had a lot of pelvic pain. So I had been going to a chiropractor, and I think she helped me a lot by like trying to like align my hips better. And the baby felt super low to me compared to my first birth. So I felt like I was in a really good place to try and like get this labor going and moving. So at 6 o'clock was when I was ready for the next dose. So they came in, the nurse checked me. And at this point, like the midwife I had not seen the midwife at all or talked to her. So the nurse checked me and she said I was still I was 3 centimeters but still, like 50% effaced. So I had made progress in the centimeters, but the effacement was still not there. And she said, okay, we're going to start Pitocin. I said, well, hold on. I had not seen the midwife, let alone talk to her at all. And 2, I don't think we need to start Pitocin. So I had asked for the midwife to come talk to me. And she did come, and she's like, well, we're just going to do Pitocin. I was like, well, I would like to do Cytotec again. Like, it's not going to hurt anything, I don't think, to do another round of Cytotec before we start Pitocin. And she kind of just had like a snooty comment and attitude towards me. And that was not how she was at all in the clinic. And she just said, like, I don't want to come at 2 a.m. to break your water. And I have all these people in labor. And I was like, okay, like, sorry, I don't know what sorry. Like, I'm in labor too.
Yeah, like scheduling's not your problem.
Right. So, and so I felt bad, but I also was like, this is kind of your job.
Yeah.
So, that was just kind of like a real letdown to me of like, okay, you think you're going to go have this kind of experience and, this kind of autonomy in your care. And then all of a sudden you're just being told like what to do and not talking to anyone, or talking to your provider about like what's happening. So, she did agree like to let me do another dose of Cytotec. So that was good. We started that, and immediately the contractions were a lot stronger to me and like closer together. So I was like, okay, well, this is a lot more painful. I was like, maybe I made the wrong decision with getting Cytotec versus Pitocin. And I was texting the backup doula. I'm like, hey, like I started again. It's more painful. Like maybe you want to start heading over here. And she's like, okay, well, just let me know when you need me. And I was like, okay. My husband decided like maybe this is a good time to go get dinner. So he went and got dinner at his grandparents' house that lived down the street. And I'm like, hey, it's fine. Like, it's, 1 more hour is only 3 centimeters. I stand up to go to the bathroom and my water breaks. And I'm like, oh my God, my husband's not here. Immediately the contractions went from maybe a pain of 5 to an 8. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? The doula's not here. My husband's not here. The midwife is upset for some reason. I just felt all of a sudden like this panic of, oh my gosh, like things are ramping up like crazy. My husband came back as I told him like the water broke. So he got there and I called the doula. I was like, you need to come now. And the contractions were lasting a minute, and I had 30 seconds in between each contraction. And they were strong. Like it just like my uterus just felt like it was just squeezing the entire time. I was trying to breathe through it. I was trying to coach my husband on like what to do. And he was trying the best, that he could. So we're trying to work through this. My nurse is in like another delivery. And I'm like, okay, it's just us. Like we're figuring it out. The doula shows up, I think about 9 o'clock. So we got, the second dose at 6, like my water broke at 7, and she shows up about 9. And at that point I was like, please help me. I've never met you in my life. Like I'm half naked in this hospital room. Like just help me. I don't care what you do. And so she suggested just like getting in the shower, and I was worried like it would be too early. And so I had the nurse come and check me, and she said I was only a 6 and I think maybe 80% effaced. And so at that point I was like, oh, I'm only a 6. Like, how long is that going to last? You don't know how long your labor is going to be. And for me, I think that's like the hardest part, is not knowing how long it's going to go for and how long you're going to endure this pain. So I got in the shower and it kind of helped, but not really. Was trying to move around. And then all these nurses come rushing in and they say they lost the baby on the monitor, because I had one of those like wireless monitors. And I guess like when I went in the bathroom, like it couldn't pick it up. So they're panicking, like, you need to lay down now. We need to find the heartbeat. And I'm like, I don't know if I can lay down. Like, I'm in so much pain. I don't know if I can lay here and sit here for you to check. And then thankfully, like, it came back on and he was fine. They just, had lost it, I guess, for the distance between the bathroom and where the system was. So at that point, I wasn't sure if I was going through transition, but I was. And, you hear like, oh, like at the point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. Like, that's when you're in transition. Right. And I was, and I just didn't know. And so, I was like, well, let me go sit on the toilet. Cause I heard that that's like the dilation station. Right. I go and sit on the toilet and immediately I'm like, I have to push. So I don't know how I went from 6 to like pushing in like 15 minutes, but I did, I guess.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I'm sitting there and the doula's like, well, let me look. And I'm like, no, like, I'm telling you, like, this baby is coming out. Like, I am not trying. He is just coming out on his own. So, they're calling the nurse. The nurse comes in. She's like, well, let me check you. And at this point, like, I had moved back to the bed. I'm on hands and knees. And like, she is trying to check me on hands and knees, but it's not like laying down. And she's like, I can't figure out how to do this. I'm like, it's fine. Like, I'm telling you, he's coming out. Like, you can't check me. He's coming out. And she looks and she's like, oh yeah, that's ahead. So she calls the midwife and she's not here. Like, she had left the hospital. And so they call, I guess, like the OB on call, whoever is like the hospitalist OB. And within like 3 or 4 pushes, like, he is out. Like, I had delivered him. And there's like a room full of nurses just like staring at me because they had heard that I wanted to go unmedicated, and they're just hanging out, just watching, I guess. I think there was like part of the NICU team was there maybe, but then the rest of them, I think, were just regular nurses who just wanted to come watch. So, cause I went back, she like filmed it and they're like, oh my God, you did so great. Like, okay, bye. And like left. But, so the hospitalist OB delivered him. And he was 8 pounds, 6 ounces and 20.5 inches, like at 38 weeks. So again, I was like, I can't believe like this baby is so big, like 2 weeks early. I can't imagine if I went longer and didn't get induced, how big he would have been.
Right.
And then with this one, I think I had like a 1st degree tear. And by the time I had delivered the placenta, like the midwife had come back. And so she did my stitches, and because it was unmedicated again, like needed, lidocaine and stuff. So I felt all of that. So she came back and she said that this was only like the 2nd birth that she had missed, but I don't know if that's true. So, but that's the 2nd birth.
Wow. That was pretty wild there at the end.
Yes. It just went so fast, from like being induced to having the baby was like 8 hours.
Yeah.
So it just like all of a sudden was just like, and we're delivering, so I'm like, okay. So it was a lot to process initially, but I think, I felt very present. And at some point I didn't feel necessarily out of control. I just felt like a lot is happening at one time. And like, how do I manage that?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Well, it sounds like you managed it well, even though it felt a little crazy at the time. Yeah. 2nd babies, man, they can really just fly out, and 8 hours is not flying out. But when you're expecting longer and when it picks up so much at the end, that's pretty wild.
Yeah. I feel like for an induction, like, I don't know, 8 hours seems pretty fast to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And going from 6 to pushing
in like 15, 20 minutes was wild.
Right. All right. So what do you want to share about postpartum? I love that you kind of have the longer term perspective as well as you're still in the middle of it.
Yeah. So I think like with both pregnancies, I had a lot of swelling while pregnant. And then after, I had a ton of swelling. Like, I could not move my feet. They were so swollen. My first pregnancy, like I said, no one talked to me about preeclampsia. I didn't know this was an issue. So like having that severe swelling, like I just thought it was from like the fluids I got with the epidural. Mm-hmm. But with my 2nd birth, I also had a lot of swelling and I had no fluids. So, I was worried about, okay, maybe I do have preeclampsia now, like postpartum. I also got like migraines. And with the 2nd pregnancy, I took my blood pressure and it was a little high. So I knew I had been diagnosed with a gestational hypertension, but I didn't know if that meant like, okay, now maybe it could turn into preeclampsia or not. And, I never got blood work done to see if it was preeclampsia, but I was put on blood pressure medication for the 2nd birth afterwards, after I came home from the hospital, because my blood pressure was still high. So, taking that medicine, it did go down and swelling did eventually go down, but I was so swollen and I like couldn't walk. I, eventually for the first pregnancy, eventually ordered compression socks. And, we took a lot of Epsom salt baths. And one of my doulas told me that watermelon is also really good to help reduce fluid. So I ate a bunch of that, and eventually like the swelling went down. And for both of them, with having stitches, for me, the recovery of that wasn't so bad. Postpartum overall was good. Like I didn't see a whole lot of difference between a medicated birth versus unmedicated for me postpartum. I think with getting the epidural, like I did have some back pain for a little bit. And then for maybe like 2 months, every once in a while I'll be standing somewhere and I get like, I call them like zings. Like you get a little zap of something in your back and you're like, oh, and then it goes away. So I'm assuming that has something to do with like getting the epidural. But overall, like for me, mostly a ton of swelling. I got some migraines and, but I don't know if that's just your hormones are changing, you're sleep deprived, all of these things are happening at one time. And it's hard to decide, okay, is this due to pregnancy? Is it due to all these other things that are happening in your life? But yeah, in this point, we're 6 weeks with our second son and you have some more confidence than the first time, I feel like, but then also now I'm trying to wrangle a toddler with a newborn. So it's a little different.
Yeah, definitely. And some of those symptoms obviously can be, something pretty serious. So just listen to your intuition and talk to your care provider and everything. But it sounds like you kind of knew what you were dealing with.
Yeah. And I think, in the hospital, they gave me like blood pressure medications and I had lost some blood, but not anything major. And, they decided just to give me some iron just in case. But coming home, they didn't send me with anything. And I thought that was strange. So I was like, let me just keep taking my blood pressure. And it was still high and I kind of felt off. So I messaged them and one of the midwives called in a prescription. So
that's good.
Was able to take that. And at this point, like 6 weeks later, I have no more swelling, and the blood pressure has regulated. So overall, like the healing and everything has gone well.
Yeah, that's good. I feel like having a blood pressure cuff at home is just a good idea for peace of mind too.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it, especially because, you don't know what's going to happen, right? And I think a lot of people I've talked to all of a sudden are having preeclampsia or blood pressure issues in pregnancy. And like with me, all my checkups were fine. And then all of a sudden it wasn't fine.
Right.
So just having it at home is nice to know. And, being able to talk to your doctor and be like, yeah, it was this like this morning. And now it's, this, and seeing the change.
Right. Yeah. Cause like swelling, is one of those things that can be lumped into the normal pregnancy symptom. And so can headaches, but like there's a difference between one versus the other. So
yeah.
Thanks for sharing that experience.
Yeah.
All right. Any resources you want to share?
Yeah. So, for me, like I obviously love the podcast. I recommend it to everyone.
Thanks.
If you're in the Huntsville area and looking for a doula, I recommend, Imagine Birth doulas or, Breathe Love Birth. Those are the two doulas that I had. And then, on YouTube, there's a family, she's an OB/GYN and her husband is a pediatrician, and their YouTube channel is called The Doctors Bjorkman. And they do a series of like when she was trying to get pregnant, like talking all about like pregnancy and like conceiving. And now that she has 3 kids, they do different things on like postpartum and having children and like different tips and tricks. So I thought that has been a really helpful resource for me, especially as a first time mom. Like you have no idea what you're doing, or your first time pregnancy, like learning from other people. So that's been great. And then I have used Aeroflow for ordering my breast pumps for both pregnancies.
Great.
And then I really liked Baby List for your registry. I just thought it was a great resource. So
yeah, awesome. Those are some well-loved brands for Birth Hour listeners. So thanks for sharing. And then where can people connect with you?
Yeah, if they want to shoot me an email, it'll be in the show notes. Or if they want to reach me on Instagram, also in the show notes. Or you can look me up by Givhan 13, Givhan 13 on Instagram.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kate, for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, now I'm going to chat with a different Kate all about Aeroflow breast pumps, getting your breast pump for free through insurance, as well as the classes that they offer that you can also get through insurance. Hi, Kate. Thanks so much for coming on the Birth Hour today to chat with me about Aeroflow breast pumps.
Yay. Hi, Bryn. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, you reached out via Instagram about Aeroflow and your experience with them, and I was so excited to talk with you. So will you just tell people a little bit about, how you found Aeroflow and the process you went through for using their services?
Yeah, for sure. So it was actually through the birth hour, through your podcast, that I heard about Aeroflow and decided to just fill out the form. It's like a very simple form you fill out online where you put in your insurance information, and then like Aeroflow does the rest.
Yeah.
And so they got me a free breast pump. I think it was the Spectra is the one that was the one I chose through insurance. But Aeroflow will actually show you like all of the different pumps available to you, how much they cost through insurance. Some of them, like, you do have to pay a little bit. And then they show you the ones that are fully covered. And so I decided, I chose the Spectra, and they sent it to me. And then I think I got like an email or a text that said like, hey, thanks for, using Aeroflow. You should also sign up for our lactation classes. And, you get tons of those sort of promotional emails.
Right.
And I didn't think much of it. I was like, okay, whatever, I'll take a look at this later. And then I started looking more into it, and I was like, oh, actually these classes look pretty cool. They were fully virtual and they were covered by insurance. And so I decided, I was like, what the heck, let's do it. And I signed up for, I think, 4 different classes. I only made it to 2 of them, but the 2 that I went to were Lactation 101 and Pumping 101. And they're just like such great classes. I was like so surprised by the quality of the classes. They're taught by, is it
IBCLC?
Yeah. And they just gave a ton of good information about like starting breastfeeding off right. And so it also would be helpful too for people who are newly breastfeeding, like to kind of work through some potential breastfeeding issues like latching or positioning. But yeah, I contribute a lot to my success. So my daughter is 4 weeks old now. And we had a pretty solid start to breastfeeding. I've been exclusively breastfeeding, and I contribute a lot of it to having that support from the class. The way the classes run too they're live.
Oh, cool. That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, they're virtual, so you can join via Zoom.
Yeah, but
they're live, and so the instructor is there teaching the course. They're also really just like super good teachers. Like I felt like the way they presented information was really good. They had tons of like visuals and videos, like live demonstrations where they had like a baby doll and they were showing different like positions and ways to get baby to latch. And so they are live though, so you can ask questions. And so you're able to like ask questions in the chat. You can, unmute and like have a conversation back and forth. So very like helpful for like if you have specific questions too about lactation.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Especially like you said, like even after baby arrives, to be able to like look at the positioning of the baby doll and like position your own baby on screen and be like, like this, or that's great.
Yeah, it's really helpful. And like the Pumping 101, like this is my first baby and I had never pumped before. And so I have the same pump that they were using in the demo, the Spectra.
Oh, nice.
And so it was really cool to I kind of like walked along with, did the demo along with them on the same pump, which was just really helpful, having never used a breast pump before. Like,
yeah.
They look kind of scary, at least to me. They looked pretty scary. And so it was nice to like be able to sort of walk through with the instructor and get a demo.
So when you were signing up for it, was the scheduling, were there like several a month or like lots of options? Or
yeah, that's a good question. It was pretty convenient. They gave a few times a month, I want to say, and like different, I want to say they were like different hours too.
Okay.
But it was like scheduling was really, really easy. I remember like, cause they have, all your information, like they have insurance information already. And so they do all the back end work of clearing this with insurance, because they're classes run by professionals and they do cost money, but insurance covers the cost. And so they would like take attendance at the beginning of the Zoom call. And then they did like all that back end work to make sure it was covered by insurance. And so I didn't have to do anything except like put in my name and email to sign up. So yeah, like really easy.
Awesome.
And again, like kind of going into it, I was like, I'll give this a try, kind of see what it's like. And then I was just like captivated. I remember after the call, getting off particularly the Lactation 101 call, and just like being like to my partner, like, oh my gosh, you've got to hear like what I learned.
Oh, cool.
Like he was like, wow, you see, like, you're like an expert now in lactation. I was like, I feel like it. Like, I feel like I'm like, have a lot of good, solid information. So yeah, like super pleasantly surprised by how informative and just helpful the classes were.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think that I had posted about Aeroflow on Instagram and you responded like, their classes are amazing. And so I knew you were passionate about it enough to like respond to an Instagram story.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. And I knew they had lactation education, but I wasn't fully aware of the format and everything and the fact that they're live. I mean, that's like having your own, virtual lactation consultant. So that's amazing.
And I had taken like a childbirth ed class, paid for, like it was a community one that I paid for here. And I live in Minneapolis. And it was like, one of the weeks we went over lactation, and it was like similar information, but like free, like I was like, and it also like it was kind of went more in depth because the Aeroflow class was specifically a lactation class, like the Lactation 101 class, what I'm thinking of. So yeah, it was just like very quality, like good information.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to add this definitely to our resources on the website and our childbirth course, because we go over a lot of that stuff as well. But the live aspect, I think, is just so great, even if it's a refresher for, second or third time, or you already took a class, just something to kind of get a refresher and ask questions and things like that. So.
And there are some other classes, like the other ones I signed up for but didn't end up making. There was like one on like maternity leave, like, and your kind of like, I think, lactation stuff around leave and like going back to work.
Right.
But yeah, they were all covered through insurance. So
very cool. Well, I'm going to have to reach out to Aeroflow and audit these classes so that I can talk about it more as well. But thank you so much for shining a spotlight on it.
Yeah, for sure. Highly recommend. So when you get that email or that text that says, hey, do you want to also sign up for the classes? You should do it. Because like I said, I was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, whatever, like promotional email for Airflow, but.
Right. And we're all paying so much for insurance, like we might as well get as much out of it as we can.
Totally. It was well worth it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Kate.
Yeah, of course, Fran. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right, to get more information from today's episode, including resources and pictures and everything, you can always just head over to thebirthhour.com and search for the guest's name in the search bar to find their show notes page. And as always, you can head over to aeroflowbreastpumps.com/birthhour to get started with their free and easy qualify through insurance form. They really do take care of everything for you, and the options are amazing, so I highly recommend checking them out. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support. And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.